Coming up on the Best of the Paul Finebaum Show podcast, a classic call from Bettye with an E you don't want to miss.
He's full of crap. Where's he been all of his life?
Former LSU and NFL back Jacob Hester is in studio, and of course, your best phone calls. It's the Best of the Finebaum Show podcast, and it starts right now.
This is the Best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Jethro is in Starkville, Mississippi. What's up, Jethro?
Yeah, Paul, I wanted to comment on the Jameis Winston, Bobby Bowden scenario.
You bet.
I think the truth is, Paul, that you are bitter. You're a bitter man that Jameis Winston, you've taken a lot of digs and jabs at Florida State, and I'm a fan of the team and Jameis. And you're bitter because Jameis blew off Saban in Alabama. He went to Florida State. You haven't got over that. You're also bitter that he beat out your boy, A.J. McCarron, for a Heisman. And you're bitter that he made the statement that he took down the SEC, and you haven't got over it, and you're never going to get over it. So you need to grow up, get over it, and realize that the SEC isn't what it used to be. And, you need to change your promo at the end of your show because the dynasty doesn't continue. It's over, it's faded, and the rest of college football has caught up with your high, mighty SEC. Would you like to comment?
Would I like to comment?
Sure.
Yeah, I would like to comment. I would like to comment by saying that you're entitled to an opinion. I would take strong exception to what you said. I voted for Jameis Winston first in the Heisman. I don't think, by the way, I didn't list A.J. McCarron on my ballot 2 years ago in the top three, so I would certainly dispute that. It doesn't matter to me where any player goes to college. When Jameis Winston chose Florida State, it was perfectly okay with me. I went to sleep that night and didn't give it a second thought. As far as FSU beating Auburn, didn't faze me. I had a job and went to work the next day, and I would say that there's not one thing you said is accurate.
Well, what about your promo? The dynasty hasn't continued. They haven't won a national championship going on 3 years, Paul. It's faded.
What's faded?
The dynasty. You haven't won a national championship going on 3 years.
First of all, Jethro, with all due respect, I'm not an SEC team. I'm just an individual person. I enjoy college football like you do and like the next person does, and whatever happens, happens. I'm a professional broadcaster. I don't really care who wins or loses other than what the impact it has on what we do the next day on this program.
Well, I want to say this in closing. There was a caller that called you about 2 months ago from the north, and he made the comment that Nick Saban was a morally bankrupt scumbag. The guy was right, because all you got to know is two words, Jonathan Taylor. And players being paid over it. He was right about them systematic cheating.
Jethro, first of all, are you familiar with what I've said about Jonathan Taylor on this program?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
I give you credit for that, Paul. Okay. You did criticize him for that, but there's a lot of times.
Well, let me ask you, though, other than Jonathan Taylor, what other reasons would you attribute to Nick Saban being morally bankrupt?
Well, does the name DJ Fluker ring a bell with you, Paul? And the investigation is still ongoing about him taking money.
And what was the result of that investigation?
It's still ongoing.
According to whom?
That's on the Internet. It's on the NCAA.com.
Well, Jethro, with all due respect, I don't live by what's said on the Internet. I live by what I can ascertain through my own reporting skills. And
well, why did he put on his Twitter account that he? Why did he put on his Twitter account that he took money that people were pimping him out at Alabama, and then he claims that his account was hacked into? Right? That's a bunch of baloney.
Okay, so other than let me keep asking the same question. I'll probably get the same result. Other than Jonathan Taylor, which we both agree Saban handled poorly in this story in relation to DJ Fluker, what else do you have in your arsenal?
What about Clinton Ha-Ha Dix? He was kicked off the team for taking coaches from an Alabama coach, and he claimed it was a loan. That's a joke. If it was everybody but Alabama, it would be a loan. He said it was a loan.
And which
It
school
was
are you?
taking money,
And which
improper
school?
benefits. They've skated on it because who they are. You and I both know it, Paul.
Well, no, we don't know it. You seem to know it. I don't know it. That's why I'm asking you these questions.
Well, how much more evidence do you need, Paul? I've given you
I
three
need
cases.
more. I need more evidence than what you read on the internet, Jethro.
Well, the bottom line is, Paul, the guy was right in what he said. He's a morally bankrupt scumbag, and everybody in the country knows it. The only people that pull for this guy is people like you.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll leave it at that since you had such a very convincing closing argument. Thanks, Jethro. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Daryl is up next in Georgia. Hey, Daryl.
What's going on, Paul?
Doing great.
Paul, you're telling me that what I read on the internet about Nick Saban cheating on Warfoggle.com is not true. Is that what you telling me that what I read about Nick Saban, okay, being a cheating thug on www.fireNick Saban, you telling me that's not true, right?
Well, you bring up a funny point, though, Daryl, and it's one problem that, why are websites connected to Georgia, Auburn, Alabama, you name it, successful, or Florida State for that matter, because the people that run the sites give the audience what they want, just like the circus. They want positive stuff about their school and negative stuff about the other. That doesn't make it accurate, though.
Whatever will draw attention to their website. This is what I do not get. Why do people believe that everything they read on the internet just automatically is true? I mean, that is like the dumb. Let me ask you something else. In Bobby Bowden's 30-year coaching career, was Florida State ever on any type of major probation?
Not until really the end when they slammed them for those courses that cost Bowden X number of wins.
Well, it just kills me when I hear people, they call him out also. I mean, if you're on a national radio show, if you're going to call somebody a cheater, whatever, someone that has put a lot, has built a career into something like Bobby Bowden has, like Nick Saban has, I think it's kind of important to have your facts correct, and instead of just basing it off what you read on the internet or what somebody told you. Because I just think it's just very disrespectful. And the last caller, absolutely full-blown idiot. He had to be an Auburn fan, right, Paul? Is that what he was?
I don't know what he was. My gut feeling is he was an FSU fan based on the tone of his voice.
Okay, well, just because you hear something or you read something on the internet does not 100% guarantee that it's a fact. That's all I wanted to say. See you, Paul.
Well, but therein lies the problem, though, and not. We believe what we want to read, and the internet sites are very clever. They have people that speak their language, just like political. If you are of a certain ideology, you tend to gravitate toward whether it's in print or on the internet or cable television, for that matter. Let's move along and grab some more calls. Tony is in Birmingham. Tony, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Paul. Hey, I think the caller before Daryl, was that Florida State's dirt neck coach, Jimbo Fisher?
The guy definitely was a Florida State fan. That's my easy
Auburn.
analysis.
It's the same. They're the same type of school. That the police are in the pocket. We all know that. Even had a player for Florida State in the draft this year said the police looked the other way. Had another player in the draft from Florida State say that going to Publix and getting free stuff's no big deal. Jameis isn't the only one doing it. And, you're talking about morally bankrupt. Florida State and Tallahassee's morally bankrupt. How can someone be accused of rape and the police never interviewed him? If you were accused of rape, you think you'd be interviewed by the police?
Yes, I would.
I know I would. I think anybody running around would, except at say Tallahassee, and you're Jameis Winston, and or if you're at Auburn and at a player party and people get shot, and the police chief, the first thing he says is, "This has nothing to do with Auburn football." Remember that? 3 years ago?
Oh, no doubt.
I mean, these things happen. These are facts that I'm talking about. But, just talking about morally bankrupt, sports in general right now, to me, is morally bankrupt. College sports. Coaches will get any player for any, it doesn't matter what the baggage is. And now you've got the fan base like Florida State. You hear them all calling in. Oh, it was fine. It's okay. They're morally bankrupt. They don't care. It's all about winning.
Well, but, what you say, Tony, I don't think you or the two of us really need to give that opinion very strongly. I think the last 2 years under Jameis Winston speaks for itself.
The fan base's response.
Just believe whatever you want to believe. But, and now you have websites and bloggers in Tallahassee attacking Bobby Bowden, of all people, because he dared to speak out. I mean, that's okay. I don't care. And I doubt seriously Bobby Bowden does either, but it just shows you the level of the people that are so in on a particular school.
It's just, it's frightening almost to hear the people call up and try to defend him. How can you defend that guy? It's like defending, Charles Manson. I mean, not that bad, but, it's indefensible.
By the way, Tony, that's pretty bad.
That's bad. I mean, maybe that's a little much, but the indefensible, people are calling up and trying to do that. And it's hard to believe. And talking about it being over and all of that, the SEC, what did it look like the last time you saw Florida State play? Did it look like they were a team trending upward?
It looked like the Florida State dynasty was pretty well over in Pasadena. It was a good run. It was a good 2-year run, but it ended badly, and I think we'll take a hiatus for a while.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Kevin Skarbinski joined us, as I mentioned, and always good to catch up. Kevin, hope all is well. Good afternoon.
Hey, Paul. I'm good. How are you?
I'm pretty well. Thank you. Certainly, I realize you don't write the headlines. You probably have been asked about that a million times in your career, but the headline about questioning whether Nick Saban will retire, you've certainly alluded to it in your column, has drawn a lot of attention. Before we get too deep into where Saban goes after this season, talk a little bit about what he said yesterday and what do you think it all means?
Well, and I will have to plead guilty, Paul. I did write that headline,
okay.
and often
then it's all your fault.
On the online column. So
okay.
I will take the responsibility for that one. It's been a series of comments that Nick Saban's made this spring. He goes on the Crimson Caravan and speaks at a number of spots to Alabama fans, and then yesterday he was playing in the Regions Tradition Pro-Am at Shoal Creek, and he met with the media there. And if you look at a number of issues that he's discussed, and he's a go-to guy, as you know, to ask about college football issues. And when you ask him about things like the playoff, he said yesterday he's concerned that his fears had come true, that the playoff has so overshadowed the bowl games, and he went so far as to suggest that maybe we should go one way or the other, either have just bowl games or just the playoff, which was a new idea I hadn't heard him mention before. And then on this issue of the cost of attendance stipends and the fact that they're allowing schools to determine their own cost of attendance, he called that a nightmare because some schools have come out with some figures that some people believe are inflated. And then, of course, the satellite camp idea, Jim Harbaugh and other coaches invading the South to try to pick up recruits, he's called that ridiculous. And you start following these breadcrumbs, and even though Cranky and Nick Saban are not strangers, he seems a little crankier than normal.
Yeah, and those are some interesting comments, Kevin, and no really reason to analyze a guy who is usually a major contender in the college football playoff now and has certainly owned the BCS. But he also said something the other day I thought was interesting, maybe at one of those Crimson Caravan spots where he talked about his team just not really being ready or into the Ohio State game, and I remember hearing that from the previous year, and I thought that was what the 2014 season was all about, to exercise the demons of the previous year.
Well, that argument doesn't fly at all, as you know, for the playoff. I mean, you're in contention. You're one of 4 teams in contention for the national championship. and you're playing Ohio State in the Sugar Bowl, there's no reason not to be 100% committed and motivated for that game. So that falls on deaf ears, that suggestion, especially a year after that excuse was floated for the Oklahoma loss in the Sugar Bowl, and you could at least make the case that they were not playing for the national championship that year, and so maybe you could give that a little more credence. But no, that doesn't fly. But what you've also heard him say, Paul, during this offseason is Alabama's trying to get its identity back. And we've heard players say that Saban has told them people don't fear Alabama the way they used to, and I think there's something to that.
And where does it go from here, though, I guess is what I'm trying to ask, because it's anyone's guess whether Auburn or Alabama will be the favorite this year. Certainly a lot of people like Auburn because of the schedule, and that's a new position for Nick Saban to be in.
Well, and it's interesting, and yet they are right there. They will be one of the favorites. They won't be preseason number one. They probably won't be preseason number two. That'll probably be Ohio State and TCU. But they will be one of the favorites, and that's despite the fact that for the second straight year, they're going into fall camp not knowing who their quarterback's going to be, and we've heard virtually everyone but Joe Namath rumored to come in as a graduate transfer to be the quarterback. So
yeah.
That indicates at least that they don't have 100% confidence in the guys that they have on campus right now.
What happens if this season is good, not great? And, yeah, we just saw a list from SI that has Auburn and Alabama in the top 4 or 5. So, I mean, as much as you want to knock Alabama, they're still a top 5 or top 10 team at the absolute worst. But what happens if Auburn does win the SEC and plays again for the national championship or gets in the 14 playoff, beats Alabama? Where does that put – I realize I'm jumping the gun here a little bit, but where does that put Nick Saban? That would be now 3 years removed from a national championship, and it seems like we do judge him on that.
And isn't it crazy that seems like forever for them to go without winning it? That's the kind of standard that they created there by winning back-to-back and then 3 out of 4 since Saban has been there. So it is going to be fascinating to watch. Now, I've always thought that he's the kind of person that would want to go out on top, that he would not go out after, say they were to go 10-2, which would seem like a disaster to some people in Tuscaloosa, but would not be terrible, and didn't get into the playoff and didn't win the SEC. I think that would just make him redouble his efforts and motivate him even more to get back to the top of the mountain. I've contended, Paul, for some time. I think he wants at least 2 more. I think he wants 2 more national championships. I think he wants to win the same number at least as Bear Bryant, and that would, I think at that point, he would seriously consider walking away.
I realize we're all just guessing because 2 years ago I would have easily predicted 2 more for Saban, and I'm sure you would have as well. But would you be bold and make that prediction now? It seems like it's a little more of a long shot.
Well, it's simple math tells you it's harder now because not only do they have to win the Iron Bowl and the SEC championship game, but now they have to win a semifinal just to get to the national championship game. So it is more difficult than it's ever been. The SEC West is more balanced than it's ever been. And look at the way Ole Miss and Mississippi State have raised their game. Texas A&M joining the league. So you go on and on. It is more difficult than ever, but when you look at the way Alabama continues to recruit, and if you look at Saban himself, his drive, his motivation, he hasn't lost a step. So I still fully believe that before he's done, he will get at least 1 more and maybe 2.
Well, you can certainly go out in public now in the state of Alabama and not fear for your life. Speaking of fearing, though, I wanted to ask you about another subject that you have been at the forefront of, and that's the absolutely shameful conversation not by the public, not by the media, but by the officials at UAB in relation to its football program. You reported the other day that a decision will be made here in 2 weeks. What's going on there?
Well, they're awaiting another in a series of studies, this by a firm called College Sports Solutions. Their deadline is tomorrow, and this is supposed to look at numbers and tell them whether UAB football is financially viable and what is the donut hole is the phrase they keep using. What is the amount that boosters and supporters are going to have to come up with to not just bring that program back to life, but help it be successful? And you know this, Paul, they have never fully invested in that program the way they should. They had zero athletic debt, and that is almost unheard of in major college athletics because they were not investing in facilities and the kind of things that other programs do. So they're going to get that report back. They're going to look at that report. The senior administration will. the same people, by the way, who made the decision to kill football in the first place. And then by June 1st, they will announce by email and social media whether they're going to bring the football program back or not.
You just made a pretty bold prediction on Nick Saban. What would your bold prediction be on this?
Well, as much as I know that people who do support UAB are working overtime to raise money, and they've done a pretty successful job of it so far, to cover that shortfall, whatever it might be, and as much as those people are confident, I still know, as I just said, the people who made the original decision are the people who will make this decision, and while I hope it goes well for them, I wouldn't hold my breath.
Kevin, it's been a story for years, many, many years, about the influence of the University of Alabama Board of Trustees. Many have pointed at Paul Bryant Jr., who has been on the board, the son of the legendary coach. You've not only talked about this, written about it over the years, you have reported on this quite extensively in recent months. What's your best guess on the way this thing really went down?
Well, I think that it has been clear for a long, long time that there are people who are on that board and there are people who support the University of Alabama who would just as much prefer that UAB not even have an athletics program, let alone a football program. So they have never, like I said, fully invested in that program. They have blocked attempts for UAB to better itself, and you can cite examples like the time they were about to hire Jimbo Fisher as head coach, and boosters were going to pony up half of the $600,000 annual salary. That was shot down. You can look at things like them raising money last spring to put artificial turf on their woebegone practice fields, and that got shot down. And there are example after example. The on-campus stadium proposal a few years ago that never was allowed to be brought forth to a board meeting for actual discussion, actual public discussion. And it's just a series of events that indicates that there are people in very powerful positions who hold UAB's fate in their hands, who aren't UAB supporters, who are rather University of Alabama athletics supporters. And it is really an extraordinary situation, Paul. There's no other school in the country that basically has boosters of one school making decisions for their athletic department.
Finally, on that subject, for those who argue that, and certainly, I mean, you've laid out a very convincing theory and reported on connections from A to Z, but why would the people who are favoring Alabama really care, considering how successful Alabama's program has been and continues to be?
Well, you can ask a similar question, and I think falls in that same line of reasoning. Why would the New England Patriots deflate the footballs for Tom Brady, or why would Nixon's White House try to go through the series of dirty tricks that they engaged in, despite their position of power at the time? And some people, they don't want any competition. Not that UAB ever has truly been competition for Alabama in recruiting or dollars or attention. But some people want the playing field all to themselves. And again, there's we could talk for hours about this, Paul. There's such a backstory to this involving Gene Bartow and Bear Bryant, and not to go into all of that, but there are reasons why some folks don't really want to see UAB succeed. Unfortunately for UAB, those folks have some say in whether they get to play or not.
Well done. Kevin Skarbinski, longtime columnist with the Birmingham News, his recent article on AL.com. Kevin, thanks. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Paul.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Jacob Hester in the house, the former LSU running back, also in the NFL. And, Jacob, thanks for being a part of it. We were chatting about Nick Saban during the break. But let me start with you on your old coach, Les Miles. He has taken a lot of hits in the offseason. You know the terrain down there. Fans of LSU, I love them because they don't sit on their laurels. They want that team to be good, and they expect that team to be good.
Absolutely. And it might be a little unfair, some of the pressure he's under. His record is like 103-29 or something crazy like that. So he's won so many football games for LSU, but, the conference says, what have you done for me lately? And the talent they have there in Baton Rouge, the recruiting classes and the draft picks that they keep churning out, and then they're all rookies every year. You want to know why these guys haven't won a national title since 2007.
You can't talk about LSU without talking about the quarterback situation. I realize Les Miles doesn't seem to know. Don't mean to put the onus on you, but what do you think is going to happen?
You know, I wish that they would go ahead and name a quarterback down there. I think it'd be better for LSU if they went ahead and named a starter. Neither guy really took the horns in spring football. They both played well in the spring game, so it wasn't a thing of them playing bad, but neither of them really took the job. I think Brandon Harris is by far the more talented kid, but I think Anthony Jennings does what Les Miles likes. He gets the team lined up. He doesn't have to call a timeout on third down because, they're one of the few teams that still huddles in football, and that's a key thing. They get him in and out of the huddle. Brandon Harris can't do that right now, and that's kind of weighing on Les Miles' decision.
You got one of the great receivers in the SEC, arguably one of the top 2 or 3 running backs in the country, if not the best, in Leonard Fournette. What do you expect in year 2 for LSU? Year 2 for Fournette in his second year, and what do you expect for LSU overall?
Well, I think it'll be the same kind of formula that LSU's used in the past. I think they'll play great defense. I think Jamal Adams playing at safety is one of the most underrated players in the country, along with Kendall Beckwith at middle linebacker. He had a great year last year. They were having a little trouble at the defensive tackle spot, and they put a bigger Mike linebacker in and Kendall Beckwith, and that really shored up the run defense. But they've got to get some kind of quarterback play. They can't play with 10 men on offense again this year and expect to be in the SEC West hunt. Fournette's a great player, and they got the number 1 recruit in the country coming back, Malachi Dupree coming back from a year ago. So they've got to use those weapons. They can't do what they did last year on offense and struggle like they did.
8-5, 4-4 in the SEC. Bitterly disappointing. On top of all that, John Chavis leaves. Certainly, Ed Orgeron and Kevin Steele coming in has satisfied some people, but not very many. Your reaction to that hire?
It's going to be tough losing John Chavis. He was the guy who churned NFL players each and every year. He had first-round draft picks. He really made players better. I think he's going to be doing a great job at A&M and getting their defense from the bottom of the conference to at least the middle of the pack this year. So it's a huge loss. But Ed Orgeron brings a presence to that defensive line that they didn't have last year. They struggled getting to the quarterback, and Kevin Steele has been around Nick Saban. He's been around Kirby Smart, so he's kind of picked up different philosophies of 3-4. They'll kind of go back and forth between a 3-4 and a 4-3, and so LSU might play more people, and it might be good for them, but John Chavis is definitely a big loss for any program.
Realistically, you know the schedule, you know the team, you know the personnel. What's LSU going to do this year?
It's tough to say. It really comes down to what kind of quarterback play they get. It comes down to, is Leonard Fournette going to have a breakout sophomore season? You saw at the end of last year the way he was running through people. He really started to come into his own. The defense, I think, is going to be okay. It really comes down to, is Leonard Fournette going to be the guy to take the Heisman Trophy that he said he was going to win, and the quarterback's going to play well?
If this season doesn't go well, and you've already alluded to Les Miles' record, what happens?
You know, I think that's a tough question because, like I said, I think it's unfairly going to come down on Les Miles if they don't win 10 games. And you look at the SEC West, you try to go from 1 to 7 and place these teams, you get down to the number 7 team, and that's a team that could – realistically, they could win any other conference in America, and so it's going to be a tough schedule. You got to go through not only these guys, but you got to go through Florida in the East, and their schedule is just really rough. And to win 10 games is going to be tough, but I think that's what he's got to do.
Booger McFarland was on here the other day. You may have heard it. He pretty much said if Les Miles doesn't win 10 games, he ought to be fired. I'm not trying to. I realize he's your coach. It's not easy talking about the man that you played for and I'm sure truly love. But is that a fair statement to make?
Yeah, I think 10 wins is kind of the benchmark. I think if he has 9 wins and he's played well in those games that he lost, that might be a different story. But if he doesn't win 10 games, I think there could be some change in Baton Rouge. Jacob
Hester, let's move on from LSU to the rest of the West. Would you go with Alabama, Auburn, LSU? There are really a lot of choices, but most people think it's going to come down to Auburn or Alabama.
Yeah, I think so, too. I think it's going to go through the state of Alabama. You look at Auburn, what they did, bringing in Will Muschamp might be the biggest recruiting that anybody did this year, was bringing him back to Auburn. Their defense is going to be better. I think Jeremy Johnson's a better quarterback than Nick Marshall. He's definitely a better passer. It depends on, can Duke Williams be the guy? Can he be the receiver that he was when Sammy Coach was on the other side of him? That's kind of the biggest question for Auburn. Then you look at Alabama, and obviously they don't know who their quarterback's going to be yet. Are they going to play the same formula of we're going to play good defense and run the ball with Henry, or are they going to try to do things different with Lane Kiffin?
If you had to make a pick today, what would it be?
I think I'd go Auburn. I think they're strong everywhere. I think getting Muschamp in to shore up that defense, and like I said, I think the quarterback play is going to be even better than it was a year ago. I think they're the team to beat.
In the East, a lot of head scratching here. Some are just saying, "Oh, okay, we'll go with Missouri. They've done it 2 years in a row," as if sometimes good things happen because they've happened in the past. But you're not that kind of person. I expect you to have a little more insight.
Well, I think Matty Mock coming back definitely helps Missouri. They're the one team in the East that really has a quarterback that has a lot of veteran presence. The rest of the guys, you look at Tennessee with Joshua Dobbs. He came in last year in the Alabama game. He really changes the feel of Tennessee when he comes into a football game. And so it really depends on them. They're kind of the it team, but can they make that transition to a good story, to a great team? And then you look at a team like Georgia, who obviously has probably one of the two best running backs in the country, and Nick Chubb. Can he be the guy that leads them to the promised land? They got a good defense, but can Bryce Ramsey, can he step up and be a quarterback that leads them to the playoff?
So I put you on the spot on that. I mean, this is what this is all about.
I'll go Missouri, but for a better reason than them winning back-to-back. I'll go because I think Russell Hansbrough, their running back, he shared time last year with Marcus Murphy and still had over 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns. I think he's the key to Mizzou. Their offense coordinator, Josh Henson, is from the Les Miles coaching tree, so we know he's going to run the football. I don't think there's any question about that. But I like Mizzou, and they keep getting these defensive player of the years that nobody's heard of the year before. And so not only because they've won back-to-back, because I think they're going to find a way to win it again.
There you go. Missouri and Auburn. I think we've seen that game before. 2 years ago.
I think the same. I think Auburn wins that game. I think Auburn finds themselves in the playoff.
Let me wrap up by talking a little bit about the NFL, and it's hard to escape the NFL these days. It's all people talk about in relation to Brady and everything else. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a tough situation. So many quarterbacks, they like their balls a certain way. They like to form them. They like to shave them down, do different things. And so it's always a tough, how do you suspend a guy? How many games is right? How much of a fine is right? So that's always a tough call. And then anytime you find somebody to suspend them, they're going to go back to another case that they might feel hits closer to home to them, and they think it's unfair that you didn't get the same amount of games as this or that. And so it's always tough. But to see Tom Brady get suspended, that's one of those guys you never thought would end up in that kind of a headline.
Great conversation with Jacob Hester, the former LSU running back. Very honest comments about Nick Saban, and it's not about Nick Saban, about Les Miles. We asked you about Nick Saban earlier, and let me get this on the record because we talked about it a little bit during the segment. Maybe we can put that up back on the board. Nick Saban's comments earlier yesterday, actually, I should say, about the 4-team playoff and how it relates to the college bowl season. You saw what he said. He definitely thinks there is an issue here in relation to the 4-team playoff taking away from the rest of it. Let me get you to reiterate that.
Anytime you separate bowl games into bigger bowl games than lesser bowl games, there's going to be questions. The BCS used to be if you didn't get in one of those games that you were in trouble, and if you went to a lower bowl. So it's the same system. The playoff is basically taken over for those BCS games that were in place when you used to win your conference and you get guaranteed spots into them. So, Saban doesn't like a lot of change. He doesn't like a lot of turnover. So I guess he likes a little bit easier way, to the championship. But the playoff, I think, was good for college football, and I think it'll be good moving forward.
Jacob Hester, thank you. Really appreciate it, and I have a feeling we'll be seeing you again. We saw you last year when we were in Baton Rouge and had a great visit, and I hope to catch up very soon.
I appreciate it. It's always good being on.
Geico presents Strange Savings Stories. Astronomers detected an interstellar transmission. It stated, Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more. The implications were staggering. Was the cosmos telling us we could all save hundreds on car insurance with Geico? Or did their radar merely pick up a signal from the nearby Rufus and Clyde's morning show? We may never know.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Bettye is in Alabama. Hey, Bettye.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm great, thank you.
I don't think so. Anybody that would let some idiot get on the phone and compare anybody to Bear Bryant has lost their minds.
You think so?
Huh?
Why is that?
Idiot that got on there thinking that Nick Saban could be Bear Bryant, was better than Bear Bryant, he's full of crap. Where's he been all of his life? I'm 75 years old. I've never called on anything before. But now that is one man that all you've got to do is give him my phone number, and so help me God, I'll be glad to meet him anywhere and just beat his royal butt. He does not, that man is stupid. He's beyond stupid. I mean, I just don't understand like that. I have never gotten so mad in all my born days as I did when that idiot come back and wanted to compare Bear Bryant to Nick Saban. I was very happy when Saban came down there. But the whole thing boils down to one thing. Saban is not Bear Bryant. I haven't seen him walk on water lately. I haven't seen him hug the first parent, anything like that. All he wants to do is be a smart butt. And the more he wins, the more money he wants.
Now, let me see if I understand this correctly, Betty. You're an Alabama fan, is that correct?
You better damn well believe it. I'm against Auburn no matter who they play.
Okay, well, that's fine. You're an Alabama fan, but you're not that big a fan of Nick Saban, is that correct?
I was a big fan of Saban's until people started, like that idiot today. I had just come home from the hospital, and that came on, and I didn't even get to hear it all. And that idiot said, well, he's not Bear Bryant. He's better than Bear Bryant. Well, that Nick Saban's not even good enough to kiss Bear Bryant's shoes.
Well, I'm not so sure I agree with you, Betty, at the risk of, did you just get out of the hospital?
Yes.
Okay, well, maybe I need to be, I hope you're okay.
Well, I think I'm going to have to go back for a nervous breakdown after somebody comparing Bear Bryant and Nick Saban.
Well, do you realize, Betty, just for the sake of argument, and it didn't happen, but if Nick Saban had won the title in 2013, that's the year that Auburn won on that remarkable last-second play, that he would have won 3 consecutive titles. That had never been done before. A lot of people, including myself, were ready to put him pretty close to that Bear Bryant plateau.
Yeah, pretty close. Not better than. Now, I'll put him up there pretty close, but I'm not going to put
Betty,
him better.
I mean, Saban has won 4 national championships. Bryant won 6. I will tell you this. I will tell you this, that it's harder to win a national championship today than it was back then. Bear Bryant, one of his national championships in 1973, you're obviously, if you're 75, you probably remember this. Alabama lost to Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl. Lost to Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl and still claimed a national championship. That wouldn't count today.
That's all because that's when the stupid idiots that write all of this stuff out was doing the voting too, wasn't it?
Well, it has nothing to do with the voting. Alabama and Notre Dame were 1 versus 2. They played, and Notre Dame won, but one of the polls, I can't remember which one, I think it was the UPI, still only awarded the national championship on the regular season. Another time, Alabama, I think, lost to Southern Cal at home. This was 1978 or 79, one of those years, and still won the national and won one of the national championships and not the other. I mean, Betty, to say that Nick Saban isn't far behind Bear Bryant really isn't much of a stretch.
Hey, I'm just saying that guy compared him to being over Bear Bryant.
Well, I don't know about that, but I would tell you, Betty, that. And by the way, I mean, if Nick Saban wins 2 more national championships, like some predict,
he will not be better than Bear Bryant. When Bear Bryant came back here and started coaching Alabama, how many games had we won in the last 3 years?
Well, I think the previous year Alabama was
2.
0-10 or something. I don't remember.
Yeah. But
Betty,
Mama,
I will tell you this,
Mama called and Daddy come running and took
I'm
care
well
of
aware of the story, but it's much tougher to win a national championship today than it was when Bear Bryant coached.
it. Is, but
I mean, Bear Bryant basically had 150 players on his team. I mean, there were no scholarship limitations. There was nothing.
No,
The schedule in
and
the SEC is much tougher.
we still had segregation then too.
I'm well aware of that. And what does that have to do with it?
That's what everybody says. They said that Bear Bryant was big enough in the state of Alabama. That was what they had on the little program, that if Bear Bryant had really wanted to, he could have gotten the players on the team.
Well, I
And
think that's pretty.
what-
I think that's pretty accurate. I mean, Bear Bryant was the most. I mean, again, he chose to wait. There's evidence to support that he tried to integrate earlier. He didn't. I think he was pretty. I think he was late on that. I don't think there's any question about that.
And how much was he making a year, Paul?
I think he was making $100,000 a year back in 1965 or 70, whatever it was.
How much was he making a game? Wasn't it like 1,700 or something?
I don't listen. I mean, I really don't know. It doesn't matter. Bear Bryant didn't exactly die a poor man. I can assure you of that.
No, I know that, but now I just don't like the man having the guts to come on TV and say that. He should have kept his mouth shut and stuck with what was going on today. Not what was going on. Not compare somebody. It's just like me, and I love Stallings. I mean, I couldn't understand why that man had to leave right as he won the national championship.
Well, there's a lot of debate about what happened. Gene Stallings he resigned, according to Coach Stallings.
Yeah, but
he didn't want to leave.
I know, but
Well, I'll tell you what happened there. Alabama had a complete idiot for an athletic director, and he pushed Stallings out. But that's old news, Betty.
I know, and but still, Bear Bryant had his time. All right, Gene Stallings had his time. We've had some other times. We've even had them using credit cards on prostitutes and things.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had a little bit of everything.
What was that? What was that thing about prostitutes?
Didn't one of our coaches, before he even coached the game, go off to Florida or somewhere and kind of use a credit card that belonged to Alabama?
Yeah, that was Mike Price. It wasn't a prostitute though. It was just a stripper.
Well, same thing.
And the rumor was it was two, but what I mean, one stripper, two strippers.
But what I'm saying is every one of these coaches have got their thing, and that's fine. But let's don't come around and compare them and put one above the other one unless it's doing something like some of our coaches have done. Now, Bear Bryant had his time. Leave him alone. Don't compare him to anybody else. Don't say somebody else is better than him.
Did you ever meet Coach Bryant?
No, but I'd have give anything if I had of.
I bet you would have.
I mean, that man, my husband got up one time, and so help me God, I was so upset with him because I wanted to go down there and see Bear Bryant Museum. And there I was trying to find clothes to put on at 2:30 in the morning.
So you wanted to go at 2:30 in the morning?
I wanted to get there early because I can't stand in line.
Okay. And your
I'm
husband
not able.
and your husband wouldn't let you.
No, he said he had to go to work, and I told him that we made enough money, we didn't have to go to work.
I wish I'd known. I was at the museum a couple of months ago. I've been happy to take you.
Well, that is one thing I hope I live to see. And as far as Joe Namath goes, the only thing I feel sorry about Joe Namath was them letting him get out there, and that girl had enough sense to walk away from him, knowing he was drinking, and letting him put himself down like he did.
You're talking about Susie Colbert, when Joe wanted to kiss her on Monday Night Football?
Kiss you. Well, hell, if I'd have been her, I'd have reached up there and give him one. Damn, what's a kiss?
A kiss is but a kiss.
That's right, and I'd probably enjoyed the devil out of it.
Well,
But
not
I'd
as much as
rather
not as
kiss-
much as
I'd
that.
much rather kiss Bear Bryant.
You would have rather kissed Bear Bryant than Joe Namath, huh?
Definitely.
Okay. Well,
Even
Betty,
though Broadway, and I made a lot of money off of Alabama. When I lived in New Mexico, them people made fun of me from being from the South and all that crap. Honey, I bet them straight down the line. Every year I took Alabama all the way through. Every time I took anything Alabama played, I took Alabama. And I'm not kidding you. On Mondays, my bar was full. They was having to bring me my money.
I tell you what, Betty, we have to run, but this I hope you'll call back again.
Are you sure? Because I don't like that woman that does all that she does, and then I call down there and make a big out of myself.
No.
All because that man had to mention Bear Bryant. Kept his mouth shut, I'd have never called. And by the way, there's an E after that Y on my name.
Betty, Bettye.
Yes.
We'll have that correct the next time you call in, Betty.
Oh, you really want me to call back?
I do. Every day.
Hey, I don't know much about football. I just know when they get the ball, they're headed for the goal line. That's all I know. And I've been watching it and betting on it for years. And I intend to continue to do so.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Let's continue with Squirrel up next. How are you, Squirrel?
You're doing great. Thanks for taking my call, Paul. And, my favorite caller, well, I had a split vote. It was between the Desperate Housewives, Debbie and Linda. But now I have a new favorite caller. Guess what her name is?
Betty with an E.
Betty with an E. And I'm listening on the radio. I mean, have you got Squirrel spelled correctly up there? I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, it looks perfect.
All right, sounds good to me. But she seemed awful defensive of Bear. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, and by the way, I didn't want to tell her, Squirrel, that I was prepared last year in 2013 if Alabama had won the title. I was prepared to say Saban was at least equal, maybe better than Bryant. That didn't happen, of course. I can only imagine how she would have reacted to that. And I think you can make a pretty strong case that Saban has done more in his era. I mean, Bryant's era, let's be honest, was not the same as it is today.
Oh, no, there's no doubt. And there's not a bigger fan of Bear Bryant than me. I've told you, years ago when we were sharing Bear Bryant stories on the air, I met him when I was in ninth grade. I told him I was going to play for him, like millions of people did. But like I tell people, my dream and Bear Bryant's dream was two different dreams, I guess. And I had SEC dreams, but I had Ohio Valley Conference talent, put it that way. but there's not a bigger fan of Bear Bryant than me. But again, at the end there, Bear was kind of slipping. We got to all agree on that. And how can you? And if Nick had won 3 in a row, you have to give him the title because it's harder to win it now than it was back then. I'm 56 years old. I can't.
And by the way, not only 3, that would have been 3 in a row, but 4 out of 5. That's the number that we have lost sight of. And again, no one knows right now what Saban will do if he never wins another one. He's had an epic career.
I think he's got another 1 or 2 up his sleeve. But does Betty realize she's a star now?
I don't think she does, but
Betty, if you're listening, we're begging you, please call in again. On behalf of the fan base of the Paul Finebaum Show, I'm asking you to please call in again. And speaking of calling in again, you had a real winner in the first hour. What was his name? Jethro?
Jethro.
Do you think that's his real name, or is that his radio name?
Well, you tell me. He was calling from Starkville, Mississippi. Does that sound familiar, or what?
Oh my gosh! Believe it or not, I was in Starkville, Columbus today on business. So, that sounds like an appropriate name for that part of the country. Let's hope it's a radio name. But I love the way you played him, and I was listening and telling you there to your first response, and I could tell immediately, okay, he's going to go low key. He's going to let the guy make a fool out of himself, which is okay. I happen to think if he'd have called in the 4th hour, I think he might have got a little different response from me.
Yeah, you're right. And listen, I never really know what as he was screaming and hollering, I'm saying to myself, if I start ranting and raving in the first hour, I'll never make it to the fourth.
Yeah, it was too early in the show, and I knew what was going on. And he was making an ass out of himself. He didn't realize it, and that was so funny. And any man that'd come on here and defend a kid, a football player who was accused of stealing a few times, who was accused of rape, who got in a public setting at the university and screamed obscenities, and compare that to a coach who's helped thousands of players over the years and lives, not just at Alabama, but all through his coaching career. That just shows what an idiot that guy was. And I hope Jethro calls in, too. You take care. Thanks for taking my call. Aloha.
Thanks, Squirrel. Always good. Always cool to catch up. Tom is next up in Cleveland. Hey, Tom.
Hi, Paul. You know, us Yankees up north are fascinated by Bettye from Alabama. She is absolutely precious.
Was she ever?
But the reason why I called, Paul, I want to talk about Nick Saban. You know, Nick is 63. He's too old now to go back to the NFL. And I think Nick is frustrated. That's why Nick is saying the things he's saying. I've always wondered, Paul, you're an Alabama fan and the Crimson Tide fans down there. You know, I get a headache listening to Nick Saban talk about the process. Nick, hey, Nick, you're giving everybody a headache here, Nick.
Well, you know, it's interesting, Tom. Saban's never been anywhere this long. So, I mean, his normal run, he was at Michigan State 5 years, the same for LSU. So, I mean, Saban is a very systematic person. He says the same thing. He repeats it. That's part and parcel to his success. So I can understand your reaction to that, but that's just who he is. And he doesn't deviate from his basic formula.
Don't you think Nick made a mistake? He could have gone back to the NFL, and he spent 2 years at Miami. He didn't do too well, but I think if he went back, I think he'd do well. But he's 63, and I think Nick is frustrated.
Well, I don't think 63 is really what would keep him from going back to the NFL. I just don't think he really wants to right now. And again, everyone reacts to different things at different points of one's life. He's been on a run. It's certainly under great scrutiny right now in terms of what happens from here. But as Kevin Skarbinski said about an hour ago, a bad season, a disastrous season for Alabama right now is when they go 10-2 and don't win the national championship.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast. ESPN Radio, bringing you directly to the biggest events in sports.
Center field, well hit, Hunter back, out of here!
From opening day of baseball,
from the plate, safe at the plate,
right through the World Series.
For the third time in 5 seasons, the San Francisco Giants are the champions of the baseball world.
Whether it's LeBron, Chris Paul, or Kevin Durant, when the NBA tips off, ESPN Radio is right there when a champion is crowned.
Have a new world champion. The San Antonio Spurs are the world champions.
And when the magic of bowl season arrives, ESPN Radio is your home for the new college football playoff.
The college football playoff first national champion, the Ohio State Buckeyes.
The biggest events in sports can be found right here on ESPN Radio. This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Fun show today for a Thursday. Feels like a Friday, but maybe it's just the time of the year. Back to you guys in the control room.
As you know, always we're poking around social media looking to see what's out there, and I stumble upon the Big Lead today posts the 25 most powerful people in sports media. You have Bill Simmons on the list. You have Jay Billis. I know you're a big fan of his. And coming in on number 18 on the list happens to be a man by the name of Paul Finebaum of ESPN Radio and SEC Network. It says here he was profiled by The New Yorker, and that was before he became a multimedia presence on ESPN and SEC Network. The radio show is a focal for college football fans and media members, and he can alter the sports national discussion with an interview, and they have a link to the Bobby Bowden interview from the other day, and a hot bit of gossip. and callers as well. Did you ever think you'd be on that list?
No. I mean, really, these are obviously subjective lists, but you don't really wake up in the morning saying, I need to be on that list. But, I mean, you're flattered. To me, it's a representation of what we do here and the impact it has. And you understand that better than anyone, John.
Yes, it's fun that colleagues like Kirk Herbstreit on the list as well, people at ESPN Radio, Colin Cowherd, friends of the show that we have on the show.
Absolutely.
That's always good. But I guess my question is, what's better, to be on the list at number 18 or have your agent on the list at number 15?
Well, I mean, you start thinking selfishly that he cost me a spot.
So, yeah, Nick Kahn, he comes in at number 15. It says his client list: Herbstreit, Rachel Nichols, you, Paul Finebaum, Hannah Storm, Keith Olbermann, Lindsey Zarniak. Plethora of talent there that Kahn's got under his watch.
It's an impressive list.
Yeah, in the past I've made some of these lists, and you kind of laugh at yourself, like, do they really know me? Do they really know what we do here? But it's the answer to that is the same as I always give. Why is this show different? Because it is caller driven. It does have great influence around the country because people call to listen to see which way the wind is blowing. I've always said, and I still believe, a lot of people could do it. We just happen to be the ones who did it, and I'm glad we did because it's very important to us, and it's a thrill to be part of something like that. But beyond that, I have no comment. Having a lot of fun here. Great reaction to Bettye, and let's continue with more phone calls here. And Michael is up next in Tallahassee. Hey, Michael.
Good afternoon, Paul. Thank you to the folks in the back room for welcoming me to the show.
Thank you.
It was interesting that I came up right after Bobby Bowden's statements, the review of them from yesterday, about how he was embarrassed and he felt that all the FSU fans, many of them, were also embarrassed by Winston. And I just remember, I've been in Tallahassee for 35 years. I'm a Florida State fan, Florida State graduate. But I wonder if Bobby remembers taking Randy Moss from Notre Dame, and then Randy Moss was tested for marijuana during spring practice when he was here, and he was gone. Sebastian Janikowski arrested for putting date rape drug in a young lady's drink. Peter Warwick getting the under-the-counter discount at a clothing store over $400. He paid $14 for. And then the wonderful, and I have to laugh because I love Steve, but Steve Spurrier calling FSU the Free Shoes University. But I didn't hear Bobby say anything back in those instances that he thought that the university was embarrassed or that their fans were. I thought it was just a little bit disingenuous.
Well, I think it's a lot of those things, Michael. You're right. It's always easier to be a Monday morning quarterback after the fact. And I'll say this. I think Bobby's comments would have had more meaning had he said them 6 or 9 months ago than after Winston has left. To me, I would have liked to have heard him say, I respect this guy, but he needs to quit acting like a jerk. He's embarrassing the school, but he didn't say that. He said it now.
Yep, I agree. And I love Bobby. He's a wonderful human being and a really good coach. It just, FSU's paying him a lot of money to go around and make speeches to raise funds, and he's getting 10% off the top for all the FSU attire that's sold through the university. And more power to him. God love him. He and Ann deserve it. But I just thought it was a little bit disingenuous. And thank you for giving me the time to spout off. And I think you should line up Bettye with Jim and make it a big national event. That would put the forthcoming.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm calling on Jim from Tuscaloosa to offer his services to escort Bettye to the museum. That would be magnanimous on his part. I-Man is up next. What do you say, I-Man?
Well, that would be the perfect thing, Paul. I'm doing great. And I know you're doing great because you're doing what you do best. You know, Paul, that would be an outstanding idea because Jim and Bettye are probably about the same age. Did it surprise you in Betty's call that she owned the bar?
No, not at all.
It did not surprise me at all. And she's in New Mexico, out there in the middle of Nowhereville, New Mexico, a little washed-up shack of a bar, and her sitting up in there with her pigtails and some of that crimson red lipstick smeared all over her face. And you know, she I guess she's out there in New Mexico, and she wasn't aware of all the lying and cheating that Bear Bryant was doing. But she'd just kiss him. She'd just kiss that man. What's wrong with a kiss? Can you imagine a kiss after swallowing the worm in the tequila on Friday night in the middle of nowhere in New Mexico?
Well, she lives now in Alabama. I think she called from, didn't she call from Anniston or something? Jacksonville. She called from Jacksonville, Alabama.
That woman is forever in Nowhereville, New Mexico, with crimson lipstick smeared on her face. Just a kiss. Have a good day.
Barry is also in Alabama. Hey, Barry.
Yeah, Betty was such a great call and a good show today. But she had such a crush on Bear Bryant. I was thinking maybe she could be a Mildred 2.0.
We need a new Mildred. For those who don't know, that's going way, way back. Mildred was a caller much like Betty.
Yeah, way back, and those were such entertaining calls. And hey, just want to say enjoy the show, and what a great caller.
Thank you very much. Good to hear from you. Jumbo is up next. Hey, Jumbo.
Hey, Paul. How you doing?
Really well.
Well, you kind of stole my thunder there. I told the guy in the back room when he took my call that I was going to call you, and I'm going to offer my services to go pick up Betty.
Well, you can.
Bring her up here to Tuscaloosa. I'll pay for the museum, and I'll even buy her lunch, and she can bring whoever she wants to with her to feel comfortable.
Listen, John and I went to the museum, the Bryant Museum, when we were in town, and we have a couple of friends there, so we're good. We're going to, I guarantee you, thanks for the call, Jumbo, the people who work at the Bryant Museum would welcome Betty in with open arms because it's that kind of place. I hope she gets there, though, because I have never been to the Bryant Museum where I didn't simply enjoy it, but I don't think anyone will have ever enjoyed it more than that lady who called in a few minutes ago.
This is the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast.
Hey, Rich.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
Hey, tremendous call with Bettye. How great was that, man? I'm with man. You love that stuff, and so do we. Hey, and the cool thing, too, Paul, is she bets. So here's yet another replacement for Danny Sheridan, and I bet she'd even take calls. And she wouldn't be hung over after playing craps. Hey, Paul, thanks for defending Coach Saban versus Coach Bryant in your interview with her, or your call with her, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And with all due respect always to Coach Bryant. But the difference that you brought up, the degree of difficulty of how hard it is to win now as opposed to then, I thought that was great. You brought up 1973, which was interesting because what was that after, an 8-9 year absence? When was it last time he had won one? Was it 65?
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, he had really struggled during that period.
And then look at the expectations differences between, now and then. I mean, here we are, he's this is his third year or 2 full years since he's won one. And everyone's all nervous about it. And here's Coach Bryant, with all due respect, that was 8-9 years in between. So I just don't. The expectation levels, I think, are ridiculous. And then the other thing I wanted to ask you is, why is everything that Nick Saban says so dissected so much? Why can't what he says be just taken off the surface, taken completely on the surface? I mean, why does everyone feel it's like a Beatles record? You got to play it backwards for a hidden message, or why is whatever this guy says so
I think that's
so
because
much?
of his stature in the game, and people are always looking for something. And by the way, Saban rarely says something without bite. He's not one of these coaches that give you the boilerplate, predictable answers. He thinks things through, usually. And when he's interviewed, he has a message and he has an agenda.
Right. but it's right there on the surface. I don't see where. Give me an example of what's under the surface of what he says.
Yeah, sometimes I think we try too hard to figure that out.
That's what I'm saying. It's not a Beatles album that you play backwards. You know, the reality is they're in the hunt every year.
Let me ask you a question, though. If you played Saban and Helter Skelter together at the same time, one backwards, one frontwards, and then switch, what would you get?
I-Man's Man Cave?
How'd you know? You're absolutely right.
No. I don't know, man. But, you know, they're realistically, Paul, they're in the hunt every year, and that's all anyone can expect. And as far as retirement goes, there's one thing I would say about this, and it goes along the lines of these expectations. If you remember, in context, this is what got his wife twisted, was what she felt was, you know, taking the joy out of winning and the unrealistic expectations. That would be the one angle that I would be concerned about, is if this becomes unbearable, the pressure that she could put on him, like any of our wives can put on us, could be the thing that pushes them out the door.
Yeah, but that's always the problem, though. I mean, if you go back to the Saban chart, the first year was transitional. The next year, they nearly won. They lost to Florida. They won in 9. 10 started number 1 in the country. 11 won, 12 won, 13 was number 1 until the Auburn game, and then 14 they were number 1 on January 1st. I mean, that's an amazing run, but it does become more difficult, and I think Saban, I always felt deep down, no evidence to support this, that he was going to give serious consideration to retiring had he won in 13, had he completed the three straight. It was my opinion he was going to ESPN to be on game day. Don't ask me how I know all that. And when that didn't happen, he dedicated himself. He came back, almost did it last year, didn't. So now what happens? Every year that he doesn't win is more of an obstacle. And I think if he ever gets another one, I don't mean to say that that's a long shot. He's always among the favorites. He might say, you know what? It was hard to get back here. Why do I really want to push it? The one thing I would disagree with Kevin earlier. I don't think Saban really cares that that he would have 5 on the next national championship and Bear Bryant has 6. Bear Bryant has never influenced Nick Saban at Alabama, and he's the only Alabama coach that Bear Bryant didn't cast a shadow over.
Right, I agree with that, Honor, and he made sure he covered that in the interview process.
He sure did.
But anyway, I just want to enjoy. Yeah, I just want to enjoy him while he's here and enjoy, the program and accept it for what it is. And if they win, that's great. And if they don't, they're always in the hunt. Thanks for taking my call, Paul.
Good stuff. Thank you very much. Rick is up next in California. Hey, Rick.
All greetings from soggy Southern California. I didn't hear the comment that guy said you had made. So I wish I'd have heard that. I was on hold at the time. So, but just real quick on the whole Jameis Winston thing. I mean, everybody's got an opinion of it, but it really doesn't matter at this point. He's now the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tampa Bay Police Department's problem. And then, he's a ticking time bomb. I don't think there's any question where his career is going to be heading. But as far as embarrassment, I don't see where the university should be embarrassed of his actions. This guy's, 21, 22 years old. I think I figured out that you shouldn't stand in public and make lewd comments to women, and you shouldn't steal from a grocery store when I was about 6. I've had that figured out. So when a guy's 21, 22 years old, he's an embarrassment to himself and his family. The Florida State University, although I'm not a fan of them or Jimbo Fisher, but they are not the problem. It was Jameis Winston's the problem. I understand Jimbo's swept some of that under the rug, and I think he should be, maybe somewhat feel some kind of a guilt for that. But for the most part, it's not like Florida State went out and recruited this guy and said, he's just a bad guy, so we're going to take him anyway. So I'm not going to hold Florida State accountable. But on another subject, as far as the schedules, I was overlooking Alabama's, and I know Phil Steele made the comment that they had the toughest schedule in the country, but Auburn's is up there too. And I think what's going to end up happening is you're going to have another year where we have to listen to these year fans for Ohio State fans or Oregon fans complain that a 1 or 2 loss SEC team's in the Final Four when the gauntlet that these guys are going to have to go through, it's not even close. I've looked at the other schedules across the country, and I'm sure you have too. How in the world are these guys going to come through? There's a 6-game stretch there where Alabama's probably going to lose at least 1, probably 2 games. Now, let me ask, is there any shot that if, let's say, Alabama lose, the winner of Alabama-Auburn goes to the SEC championship, there is no shot that a 2-loss SEC team could get that another spot because it's based on their schedule, right? That would be
well, you don't know. I mean, you really just don't know right now. But I certainly think it would be a hill to climb. And if Auburn or Alabama had 2 losses, let's say it's Alabama, you would really need Georgia or Missouri or Tennessee or anyone from that side to be very high in the rankings. I mean, that has to be a big win. It can't be like it's been the last 2 years where Missouri was good. Missouri 2 years ago only had 1 loss in that game. Last year, they wouldn't have helped the cause at all.
Right. Well, take a look, when you get a chance, take a look at these other teams that are expected to be, in that final 5 or 4 or 5 teams that they're considering, and look at their schedules. Good Lord. I mean, the schedules that they have are ridiculously easy. And it's just that, very frustrating that they're screaming and yelling that we should play a 9-game schedule, or, at the in-conference schedule, and complaining about the SEC as far as, getting too many teams in there. There's no question when you look up and down these schedules where the difficulty lies, and it is in the SEC. And I'm an Alabama fan, so I'm not an Auburn fan, but Auburn's in the same boat as Alabama. The only good thing that Alabama has going for them is it's kind of split up, where they have a couple on the road and 3 at home, and 1 on the road and 2 at home. So I think they will have time to get healthy, and I think the first 4 games, should they get past Wisconsin, they're going to have a stretch there, barring Ole Miss, to be able to kind of get some legs underneath them and stuff before they hit that 6-game stretch. It's just, that's murderer's row, my friend. I mean,
it really is, Rick. I completely and totally agree with you.
Thank you for listening to the best of the Paul Finebaum podcast. Tune into the Paul Finebaum Show every day from 3 to 7 Eastern on the SEC Network or on the ESPN Radio app. Two of baseball's best go head-to-head in interleague action when the Tigers head to St. Louis to face the Cardinals. That one is gone. The pregame at 7 Eastern, first pitch at 8, Sunday on ESPN and ESPN Radio.